Now, if you know me and you know my channel, you know that I've absolutely loved using the LUMIX GH5. I've basically built my whole channel around the GH5, and I've been using the GH5 for client work since it came out. But after using the GH6 now for about 9 months, is it time to fully move from the GH5 to the GH6? Here's a few reasons why I think it might be time. If you're new here, my name is Caleb, and I've been doing freelance videos since 2012, and I've been using LUMIX cameras since the GH4. If you want to learn more about LUMIX cameras like the GH5, GH6, or the S5, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And this video is sponsored by LUMIX. I have a ton of history with the LUMIX GH5, and there's so many reasons why I like this for client work, and I liked it for making YouTube videos, and it all stems from just the video settings, and this is fully from a video perspective. The video settings are just outstanding, but you know what? Because of the Venus engine in the LUMIX GH6, those shoot settings are even better. So basically everything stems from that new Venus engine that is in the LUMIX GH6. With the GH5, you're not gonna have any more firmware updates. It's done, it's as far as it's gonna go. With the GH6 and the new Venus engine, any new updates that come out, you're able to update the firmware. And that's one thing that LUMIX is really good about, is giving those firmware updates. And with the GH6, there's gonna be a lot of good firmware updates here coming up in the future. And the GH6 is primarily a 10-bit camera. Fully 10-bit camera. You really have to dig deep into maybe some MP4 shoot settings to find 8-bit, but the GH6 is going to be a full 10-bit camera. And being a video shooter and having that color depth with 10-bit, even 420 10-bit, the color is so much better. A lot of times with 8-bit shooting, you're gonna get some color banding, especially in the skies, and even some glitches in skin tones. But with 10-bit shooting, the colors are gonna be smooth, and you're gonna have a lot of depth to those colors. And with this new engine in the GH6, you're gonna have internal 5.7K up to 30p Apple ProRes recording. And honestly, in any hybrid body like this, that is super impressive to be able to record 5.7K Apple ProRes internally. And honestly, the shoot settings keep getting better because you have 10-bit DCI 4K 120 as a shoot setting. On the GH5, you have variable frame rate up to 120 in HD, but having 120 on the GH6 as an actual shoot setting, you get that audio with it, which on the variable frame rate, you're not gonna get. But to go along with that, you also have the full HD 300 frames per second internal recording. And honestly, the GH6 is a B-roll monster. At the time of recording this, over the past 9 months, this has been my primary B-roll camera. And then one of the shoot settings that we can't forget to talk about on the GH6 is the 5.8K open gate full sensor recording. That's going to give you some great anamorphic options, but also allows you to record in the 4:3 aspect ratio and use the full width and height of the sensor. So instead of shooting vertically like this, you can actually set your frame markers and use that full height of the sensor. If you want to crop into a vertical crop or a square crop, you have the full height and width of the sensor. So as much as I love the shoot settings and record settings of the GH5, the GH6 record settings far outperform the GH5. So that might be one reason why it's time to move on from the GH5 to the GH6. Another reason it might be time to move over to the GH6 is because on the GH6, you have the full Vlog color profile. On the GH5, you have the Vlog L, which is a light version of Vlog. And let me be totally honest with you, I very rarely ever used it. I know a lot of people had a lot of success with the Vlog L on the GH5, but honestly, I had a ton of trouble with it. I had color glitches and I just never used it. I primarily used the natural color profile with the GH5. But with the GH6, you have the full S-curve of Vlog, and actually I've been shooting primarily full Vlog on the GH6 and very rarely touch the natural color profile. The full Vlog on the GH6 is gonna give you 12 stops of dynamic range. But with the dynamic range boost mode, you're gonna have a full 13 stops of dynamic range between your highs and lows, but that does give you a base ISO of 2000, and you might start introducing some noise to your image if you're shooting with that dynamic range boost mode on. But I love having that 12 stops of dynamic range with the full Vlog color profile on the GH6, and I really feel like it's made my image a lot better. Another reason why it might be time to move on from the GH5 is because the GH6, you have external SSD recording. So you're not gonna have to rely on SD cards or CF Express cards. You will be able to, through USB-C, record straight to SSD. In those huge Apple ProRes files, you're gonna have plenty of storage space, up to 2 terabytes of storage space on those external SSDs, which is gonna allow you to record a lot longer, a lot more. And if you're shooting like weddings or events, that external SSD recording is going to come in huge. Now on the GH5 and the GH6, you're able to record externally through HDMI, but if you want a smaller profile setup, and let's say you don't have like the Adamas Ninja, the SSD recording is a very affordable way to record externally with the GH6. A ton of storage space and super affordable. Now let's talk about IBIS. One of the reasons I've loved the GH5 is because of the in-body image stabilization, especially with any lens that provides dual IBIS on the GH5. You have 5 stops of in-body image stabilization. Okay, let me put this aside. With the GH6 and dual IBIS, you have up to 7.5 stops of in-body image stabilization. If you have any lens with the optical image stabilization combined with the GH6, that's basically a gimbal killer. You'll be able to shoot really anything, even walking shots, with the LUMIX GH6 handheld. The in-body image stabilization is outstanding and noticeably improved over the GH5. Now, another thing we need to talk about with the GH6 is the improved autofocus. Is it where it needs to be, especially for content creators? Not even close. But it is usable over the GH5, which with the GH5, the autofocus isn't even usable. There is no situation, no circumstance, no scenario where I have ever used the autofocus with the GH5. Now with the GH6 and like Human Detect, you are able to get some fairly decent tracking shots, and I've shot a little bit with a gimbal and the autofocus has been okay. Like I said, it's not fantastic, but it is much improved over the GH5. Now, if you're watching this video, you are probably in some type of video production, whether you're making content like this or whether you're doing client work, whatever the case may be, you may be shooting a lot of interview style video. And one of the most important things with that is audio. And with the GH6, you're gonna have 4 channels of audio that you can work with. So that's gonna allow you to shoot more dynamic interviews and use multiple mics and just give you more options when it comes to audio in interviews. There's so many different things that I could touch on in the different features of the LUMIX GH6 compared to the GH5, but honestly, I don't want this video to be like 45 minutes long. These are just a few reasons why I think it might be time to move to the LUMIX GH6 if you're a Micro Four Thirds shooter. Now, if you have any thoughts about the LUMIX GH5 compared to the LUMIX GH6, make sure you let me know down in the comments. I'd love to get a conversation started down there. Again, LUMIX, thank you so much for sponsoring this video. I really do appreciate it. Well, that's really all I have for this video. If you have time, maybe stick around. Watch one of these videos that's popping up on your screen right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.